Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second edition of the UHN Foundation's three-part Krembil Discovery live stream series. This evening, we shine the spotlight on the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, home to Canada's largest arthritis program. I'm Christian Cote, host of Behind the Breakthrough, the podcast all about groundbreaking medical research and the people behind it at the University Health Network. We're so glad you could join us, and we hope you're staying safe and taking care of each other as we begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel of this COVID-19 pandemic. And as valued members of our community, we are so pleased to bring you this exclusive and up-close access to the scientists and the amazing innovations that are ongoing at UHN every day. Now, quick background to this Discovery live stream series. It was inspired by the generous donors to the 2020 Discovery Ball. That was, of course, intended to be an in-person and celebratory event, but public health and safety guidelines required we postpone it. There is a silver lining here, however, because in an incredible show of support, our donors and sponsors stepped up to honor their donation commitments, and that is testimony to the unwavering belief in the research ongoing at the Krembil Research Institute. So, thanks to their generosity, these funds will support a portion of the Krembil Research Institute core budget, which supports all three of the institutes we're highlighting in this live stream series. Today, we're talking one-on-one with the co-director of the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, that's Dr. Mohit Kapoor, about his vision for the institute and his pioneering work. We're also going to introduce you to some of the rising stars at the Schroeder Arthritis Institute. Plus, we want to get you involved in the conversation. So as the live stream unfolds, if you have a question, please go to the link at the bottom of your page, you should see it, or go to slido.com, click on the link and go to type in hashtag 648458. That's hashtag 648458. Submit your question. You can also vote up questions you'd like to hear answered, and we'll get to them a little later in the live stream. Please keep in mind, we can't field anything of a personal medical nature. Okay, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the three pillars of research that are being generated at the Krembil Research Institute, the communications team at the UHN Foundation has put together a short sizzle reel to bring you up to speed.
Diseases of the brain, joints, and eyes impact millions around the world, more of us every day. Most medications and treatments address symptoms. What we need are cures. The brain is the most complex and least understood organ in our body. Researchers at the Krembil Brain Institute are not only unraveling its mysteries, they're on the cusp of game-changing breakthroughs to halt the progression of dementia and Alzheimer's, to treat complex brain tumors, stop seizures, diagnose Parkinson's and other movement disorders earlier and with more accuracy, to help people walk again, stop stroke damage, and even prevent strokes from happening. In other words, they're using their brains to save yours. By the time arthritis is diagnosed, the damage is often done. The Schroeder Arthritis Institute is decoding the complexities of arthritis to build a cure. Here, researchers are developing blood tests to diagnose it early, predicting outcomes of surgical and medical treatments to provide ultra-precise and personalized care, and working on world-first therapies to treat, halt, and even reverse the damage. Their ultimate mission? To cure arthritis in our lifetime. Diseases of the eye impact people of all ages and stages, and they're on the rise. The Donald K. Johnson Eye Institute is gaining new and extraordinary insights into these diseases to slow vision loss and help people see again. They're working to restore eyesight through cell transplantation, using 3D printing and developing a drug to treat glaucoma. They're exploring how virtual reality can help retrain the eyes of people with vision loss, and working on a drug that could save eye cells from dying. It's not just about giving people back their sight, it's about giving them back their lives too. For researchers at UHN's Toronto Western Hospital, relentless is more than just a word. It's a driving force. After all, we're not just here to study these diseases. We're here to stop them cold.
So clearly, this relentless pursuit of new treatments and cures is in the DNA of all the scientists at the Krembil Research Institute, and critical to nurturing that talent is leadership. Dr. Don Weaver is the director of the Krembil Research Institute and research co-director of the Krembil Brain Institute. Dr. Weaver is an award-winning scientist and a world-leading researcher in the search for a cure for Alzheimer's and dementia. Welcome, Dr. Weaver.
Thank you, Christian, and welcome to all of our viewers today. I thank you ever so much for joining us on this pleasant summer's evening, but you will be rewarded with a fascinating array of presentations that will provide just a glimpse of some of the really groundbreaking research in arthritis that is happening at the Schroeder Arthritis Institute. Now, as you are aware, UHN is a pretty complicated place. We have multiple sites and multiple locations. I like to think of UHN as consisting of the Toronto Western Hospital and several other locations that you might have heard of up on University Avenue, places like Princess Margaret and Toronto General Hospital. Now, each one of these sites has a research institute associated with it, and the Krembil Research Institute is the research institute associated with the Toronto Western site. Now, at the Toronto Western site and the research institute that we have, we are focused on several areas. Arthritis research, as you will hear about tonight, vision research, and also brain. And you go, well, what are the three things that unite all of these? And there is one important factor that brings all these together, and that it is diseases of the joints or arthritis, diseases of vision, and diseases of the brain, which result in people ending up in long-term care facilities. Your arthritis is so bad you can't move, your vision is so bad that you're having a visual impairment, or dementia or stroke is resulting in your inability to care for yourself. And so really, we are committed to keeping people at home and to improving their qualities of life. And because these three areas are so important, we actually have 3 research institutes dedicated to each one of these areas. And tonight, you're going to be hearing about the research that is ongoing at the Schroeder Arthritis Institute. And so collectively, we work together as a whole for common good. And there's a lot of lessons that we learn from each other, but we really are focused on these 3 areas. So please enjoy along with me tonight as we hear about the fascinating work ongoing in arthritis research.
Thanks so much, Dr. Weaver. And let's bring in one of the co-directors of the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, Dr. Mohit Kapoor. He holds the Tony and Sherry Fell Platinum Chair in Arthritis Research. He is a senior scientist at the Krembil Research Institute, and he holds a Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in the Mechanisms of Joint Degeneration. He is a career scientist in cartilage biology, and Dr. Kapoor heads a dynamic and world-leading translational research program with 3 primary goals: understand what causes joint destruction, discover how to diagnose the early stages of arthritis, and finally, restore joint function. Dr. Kapoor is relentless in his drive to pioneer research that benefits patients. And as a result of his program pursuits, he and his team are first in the world to identify certain biomarkers involved in spine arthritis. He's developing a diagnostic tool to actually detect arthritis, and he's developing a treatment to stop the breakdown of cartilage in the joints. Welcome, Dr. Kapoor.
Thank you. Good evening, Christian and everyone. Delighted to join today.
We're so pleased to have you. I hope I gave you justice in that intro too. Let's start big picture. Talk to us about your priorities for the Schroeder Arthritis Institute.
Absolutely, Christian. Well, let me start by saying with the audience that we took over 2.5 years after consultation with each member of the Institute to establish a short-term as well as a long-term strategic plan that would help integrate patient care with education and research. We have 4 specific priorities for the Schroeder Arthritis Institute. The first priority is focused on creating new diagnostic tools and therapeutics in arthritis. And this specific priority is focused on finding ways to detect arthritis in patients early on so that we can intervene early on with new treatments. Our second priority is to exploit the power of artificial intelligence. This is to understand the complexity of arthritis and devise new treatment and management strategies for patients. Our third priority is focused on creating new models of care, such as creating framework around reducing wait time for patients suffering from distinct forms of arthritis. Another example is innovations in virtual care. And as you know, virtual care is critical now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our last and the fourth priority is the translational medicine to ensure we are able to create basic and advanced infrastructure as well as resources to help bring our discoveries in the lab to our patients in the form of new treatments and diagnostics.
And Mohit, you've recently been renamed the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, which was huge news last year. Give us a sense then of your vision for the future in terms of where you want to take the Schroeder Arthritis Institute.
Absolutely. We were called the Arthritis Program before, thanks to Walter and Maria Schroeder for the $25 million landmark gift. We have now named the Institute, and it started in October of 2020, and we're going great guns at the moment. Well, the vision we have is not just my own, but a collective vision of each and every individual within the Schroeder Arthritis Institute. We are the largest multidisciplinary arthritis hub in Canada, but we envision that the Schroeder Arthritis Institute will be the world-leading arthritis center for patient care, education, and research in the next few years. To reach there, we have set short-term goals as well as long-term goals. Our mission is to decode arthritis and really to build a quick cure.
Okay, let's turn to your research, Mohit, but I think it might be just useful if you don't mind framing the narrative for myself and the audience. Just could you give us a bit of a primer first on what is osteoarthritis?
Absolutely. Well, osteoarthritis is the most common form of arthritis. It can affect any joint in our body, but most commonly affects joints in the hand, could be spines, could be knees and hips. One of the major tissues that gets affected in osteoarthritis is our cartilage. Because of inflammation and a lot of other forms of destructive activities which go on in the joint, cartilage wears off over time, resulting in the exposure of underlying bone. Once cartilage breaks down, it doesn't grow back on its own. As a last resort, joint replacement strategies are used. And osteoarthritis not only affects our joints, but impacts our quality of life and mobility. And there are several risk factors associated with osteoarthritis. These include age, gender, obesity, joint injuries, and several other comorbidities.
Okay, and what's on offer right now for patients in terms of a cure or treatments?
Christian, we currently don't have any cure for osteoarthritis. The approved and available treatments we have are only able to manage pain and symptoms of the patients. However, there is no approved treatment that can stop the disease process.
Okay, which makes, let's get to your work, starting with the fact that you're developing this diagnostic tool, and that's really perhaps the starting point for when things go downhill for people, because there is no way to confirm, correct, osteoarthritis other than a clinical diagnosis based on patient symptoms and perhaps x-rays, which often comes too late. So this diagnostic tool you're developing, how will that help in terms of patients down the line?
Absolutely. So creating a diagnostic test, first of all, for osteoarthritis specifically is quite tricky, as each patient is different from the other. To detect osteoarthritis in patients efficiently and accurately, we need to understand several things in our patients, such as their inflammatory status, their metabolic status, as well as gene profiles. We are so fortunate within the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, we have created one of the largest biobanks of osteoarthritis that stores thousands of bloods and tissue samples from patients with osteoarthritis. We have also created a world-class gene sequencing center to profile all the genes that are present in a human body. Using these resources, we have now identified a set of these metabolic molecules, as well as genes that are highly active in blood of patients with early stages of osteoarthritis. We're now working on creating a simple blood test panel kits to enable early detection of the disease using the molecules that we have or are also identifying during our screening process. One thing which I would like to share with everyone, this is not prime time at the moment. This is still work in progress. We are validating our findings and hoping to create a highly sensitive diagnostic test panels in near future.
Presumably, when you get this blood test and you test positive for these biomarkers that you've identified, would you also be able to tell when it is ready for prime time what stage of osteoarthritis you're in?
Absolutely, Christian. This is the whole idea. There are certain molecules which are quite specific, which we have identified, which actually tell us if you have osteoarthritis or not, or if you are at risk of developing osteoarthritis. But because the patient complexity, as well as one person is so different from the other, that's why certain molecules are present in certain individuals but are not present in the other individuals. That's why we need to devise these tailored tests for certain individuals.
Well, that would certainly be groundbreaking and a huge help and benefit to patients with osteoarthritis. We need to mention another groundbreaking step forward you are taking in your research, a first of its kind trial. And you have the details here. I'll just set it up for you. It involves an injectable therapy designed to arrest the progression of osteoarthritis. What can you tell us about what's going on there?
Absolutely, Christian. Indeed, we are super excited about this therapeutic. As I mentioned before, there is no approved therapeutic that can stop osteoarthritis in patients. In 2016, we screened all small molecules in cartilage of patients with osteoarthritis. And we were quite lucky where we identified a specific molecule that is rapidly increased in patient cartilage as the severity of osteoarthritis increases. This molecule is quite harmful because it increases inflammation and causes cartilage cells to die, and thus basically destroying our cartilage. In the last few years, we have created an injectable therapy that stops the activity of this molecule in patient cells, and we've used animal models as well, and basically stops the cartilage destruction in knee and spine joints. We believe this disease stopping therapy would be useful for both humans as well as animals, such as horses or dogs suffering from osteoarthritis. Matter of fact, this year we are conducting a safety trial in horses in collaboration with the University of Guelph to test the safety of this injectable therapy. We plan to test horses that have osteoarthritis after we have conducted the safety trial. If we get favorable data from this trial, we plan to initiate clinical trials in the near future, as well as pursue the veterinary application of this injectable therapy. It's important to know that this therapy is in development and not available and approved at this point.
Understood, but best of luck on that. It could be a game changer. Before we bring in our guest scientists, I want to just ask you, are there any other scientists or clinicians with work ongoing that you think we should know about?
Absolutely. Well, within the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, we have 4 clinical divisions, which integrates research and education. This is orthopedics, rheumatology, hand, and osteoporosis. And each division is the leader of their respective field. I'll just give you some of the key examples of pioneering work at the Institute. This is Dr. Rajaram Prasad, a rapid assessment clinic, Dr. Heather Balzer's innovations in hand surgery, Dr. Robert Inman and Dr. Nigel Haroon, development of new therapeutics for ankylosing spondylitis, Dr. Igor Jarisica's innovation in machine learning, and Dr. Angela Chung's pioneer work in osteoporosis and bone diseases, and many more. And you will also hear from Dr. Tuma, Dr. Viswanathan, and Dr. Leroux tonight.
That's right. Thanks so much, Mohit. Best of luck to you in your trial.
Thank you so
quick reminder for the audience, if you have a question for our scientists and clinicians, we invite you to go to slido.com, type in hashtag 648458. That's hashtag 648458. You can submit and vote up questions. We'll get to them a little later in the broadcast. Okay, as mentioned, we have 3 up-and-coming research stars who are cross-appointed to both the Schroeder Arthritis Institute and the Krembil Research Institute. First up, we have surgeon scientist Dr. Tim Leroux. Dr. LaRue is an orthopedic surgeon specializing in minimally invasive shoulder surgery. He joined UHN in 2017 after completing fellowship training at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, where he was also a fellow team physician for the NBA Chicago Bulls and Major League Baseball Chicago White Sox. Quite impressive. Welcome, Dr. LaRue.
Thanks for having me.
One of your areas of research focus is understanding whether cannabis is effective in pain management for patients with osteoarthritis. And I understand it all started for you with conversations you were actually having with patients in the clinic. What was happening there?
Yeah, so when I started practice about 4 years ago, I had frequent sort of clinical encounters with patients about how they were managing their pain, how they were managing their dysfunction. And what was prevalent at the time was the opioid epidemic and the understanding that some pain medicines were harmful, impactful on society, and there was a movement away from those. And a lot of patients were moving towards other sort of non-standard pharmacological agents. And one thing that was coming into the forefront with legalization was cannabis. So a lot of patients were reporting to me and to some of my colleagues and many in orthopedics that they were taking cannabis and they were having success with it or finding that it was helpful for them. And so this started sort of a pilot project for us where we wanted to really uncover just the prevalence of use and what patients were using and whether they were reporting it to be effective or not in managing their symptoms.
Okay, so let's keep going there. In 2019, you set out to test this connection of cannabis and pain relief for osteoarthritis symptoms. Talk to us about how you conducted the study.
So at the time, it was simply an observational study. So no one had really uncovered just the prevalence of use. So what proportion of patients with arthritis symptoms are taking cannabis? And the problems with that was that prior to legalization, a lot of patients would not be apt to self-report use in that way. So as we approach legalization in the post-legalized world, we felt it was an appropriate time to sample our patients and really get a sense of who's using and was this a worthwhile endeavor to study further. And so that's how it all started. So we took all patients coming to our clinic over a 6-month period, and we looked at about 1,000 patients. And following, the screening process, we were able to study just over 600 patients and found that about 20% of people who had a first-time visit to our clinic for symptoms consistent with osteoarthritis or arthritis, generally speaking, were taking cannabis with the specific intention of managing pain or dysfunction related to their joint problem.
And Tim, what were they saying about benefit?
Yeah, so that was the most interesting part of this whole thing, is that not only was 1 in 5 patients using cannabis or had tried to use cannabis to specifically manage osteoarthritis symptoms, many were reporting that it was effective. Many were reporting, I think over 80% had said that there was a significant effect on their symptoms. But perhaps even more importantly and most interestingly was that a lot of patients didn't know what they were taking. They couldn't tell us the product. They sourced their product from family or friends versus a legalized environment or a place such that would be akin to a pharmacy for cannabis. And many were not speaking with their family physician or a healthcare provider about their cannabis use. And so they were taking cannabis, they were reporting it to be effective, many times more effective than other things they had tried, without really understanding what they were taking, the dosage of what they were taking, or why it was working. And so this really then initiated the next steps in sort of our understanding of cannabis and osteoarthritis and sort of the next study, if you will.
Yeah, I was going to say an observational study. I'm guessing this was not enough yet to maybe have MDs start prescribing this. So how are you pursuing this further?
Yeah, that's a big problem, I think, in the cannabis world, is that it's available in the marketplace for patients to purchase. Certain products are advertised as being more efficacious for osteoarthritis management or other symptoms, but we don't have that scientific connection yet, and we don't understand why that is. And so patients are taking it because they speak with someone who's using it, and they take that product and they continue to use it. So what we found is that what we need to fill what was empty here in terms of our understanding was whether or not cannabis truly had a scientific explanation for this self-reported efficacy. And we wanted to make connections in that way that has never been done before. And a lot of people have formed careers about understanding the relationship between osteoarthritis or arthritis and cannabis in animal models, but we wanted to try to study that in the human. And it's a bit challenging to do because the products are so variable, but we wanted to try to take patients who are using cannabis, who have diagnosis of end-stage osteoarthritis of their knee and are then undergoing a joint replacement, which would afford us the opportunity to collect samples they were taking, collect blood samples to say what is the concentration of cannabis byproducts in their blood, and also study the tissue to say, are there cannabis byproducts in the tissue being removed from their symptomatic knee? And does this all make sense? Is there something to this, or is this a placebo effect, or is this a combination thereof? But we need to start somewhere. And here at Schroeder Arthritis Institute, we have a great connection between basic science and clinicians. And this is a great atmosphere and environment to be able to study the tissues, study the bloods, and study how people are actually doing from a patient-reported outcome standpoint. So this is the studying that is currently enrolling next month.
Fantastic. All right, before we move on to anybody else, another area of research I want to touch on with you is you're pioneering in Canada the benefit of mixed reality. And you're going to have to explain this to us, but this is to help you better position shoulder implants during surgery. So talk to us first about this issue of precision placement and the challenges you face in the OR.
Yeah, this is a very complex issue that we face, one that has been tried to overcome for many years. And with the onset of technology and virtual reality, mixed reality, we now have the opportunity to potentially have technology help us to achieve outcomes we're looking for in our patients. And simply put, shoulder replacement is the outcomes of shoulder replacement are directly related to the positions of the implants that we put them in. Putting implants in a three-dimensional environment is very challenging for a surgeon to do. We think we're good, but studies have shown we're not as good as we think. And so with that being said, people have tried different ways to better position the implants with a reproducible technique. And some are good and some are more challenging. And so now with technology, we're able to take a three-dimensional model of the shoulder, put it into a virtual world. And I have right with me here I'm not sure if you can see, but I have the HoloLens, right, which allows me so I can operate through this. So I see through my lens, but I'm also operating in a virtual world that has the 3D model of the shoulder, allows me to put that 3D model over top of the shoulder that I'm reconstructing. And with some precision allows me to put the implant in the position that I've done already the surgery virtually on a computer, and I can reproduce that inside the OR. And so this is a very cutting edge technique that we're working on. We're one in only 2 centers in Canada, one in only 12 centers around the world using this type of technology. And the hope is that in the future, this will become commonplace to improve outcomes for patients undergoing shoulder replacement, and maybe even taking some of that technology and improving other operations that we do in other parts of the body.
Can you share with us, Tim, like benefits so far that you're seeing using this headset?
So the benefits are definitely, I haven't had enough experience with it to say that it's improved patient outcome. And I think we're too early in the stage of that. But it's very interesting to take a 3D model and overlay it on a real person model. And where I thought I was putting it and where I should be putting it is always very interesting to compare and contrast. And so I still am building trust with the technology. But as the science evolves and we study these outcomes better, we'll be able to better trust it and be able to put implants or do surgeries in ways that are very reproducible and hopefully lessen surgical error and improve patient outcomes and sort of the survivorship of these implants. Although it sounds like from what Mohit's saying, we may not be using joint replacement very much in the future. So
fingers crossed. But until that time, my understanding is just this is fascinating because the headset helps you place it more optimally, because your vision, you're looking at a shoulder, for example, that's really worn down, right? And it doesn't really look like it's supposed to look or should look, which would help you. It would give you visual cues to know where to place it. So that's where the headset comes in, right?
Yeah. And when we do our reference points for where where the implant needs to be. It's based off the entire scapula, but as you can imagine, I'm only seeing the front part of the scapula. It's fully encased in muscle. So my reference points are not entirely there, and they can be entirely affected by patient positioning, the way they're sitting in the OR, landmarks that may not be truly visible to me. So the technology helps to try to mitigate some of those issues that we commonly face. And that's why surgeons think they're better than they are, when we're truly not as good as we think we are. And so that's how we have this sort of symbiosis with technology and the art of surgery. And that's the hope that in the future, we'll be able to use the both together collaboratively to then improve patient outcomes.
That's really cool. Finally, talk to us about the Schroeder Arthritis Institute culture. What drew you to bring your research talents here?
So first and foremost, and you're seeing that tonight, is that there is a tremendous collaboration between basic science and clinicians. And there is no other place in the world that I've worked or been a part of or have colleagues work at that is this collaborative and this cutting edge. And I mean, the meetings that we have on a regular basis that talk about basic science, that talk about clinical outcomes, I just have never experienced anything like that. So to work in a place where the two can come together is really the forefront of arthritis research and really where you need to be. So I can only do so much research before I can call on a scientific colleague to say, like, why is this happening? How can we fix this? How can we go beyond just improving surgical outcomes to potentially preventing the surgery in the first place? And while that will put me out of business, it's the best care for the patient. And there's no place like this in the world. And I'm proud to say that I am a part of UHN and the Schroeder Arthritis Institute.
Well, it's great to have you here. Thanks, Dr. LaRue. Next up, Dr. Zahi Touma, who has quickly developed an international reputation for his work in lupus. In 2007, Dr. Touma joined UHN as a trainee in the lupus clinic at Toronto Western Hospital. That's the largest lupus program in the world in terms of patient care, research, and education. And the program just celebrated its 50-year milestone. Dr. Touma is now a clinician scientist, and his research includes the groundbreaking development of screening and diagnostic tools for patients with lupus. Welcome, Dr. Touma.
Thank you for having me, Christian.
For those of us not familiar with lupus, do you mind giving us a little primer on what is this disease and the scope of the disease in Canada?
Absolutely. So systemic lupus erythematosus, or lupus SLE, is an autoimmune disease where there is actually a dysfunction in the immune system. So ideally, the immune system is there to protect us from infection. But what's happening in people living with lupus, the immune system is producing antibodies and attacking the organs. And these antibodies can attack the skin, then you develop skin rash. It can go to the brain when you can have seizure or brain hemorrhage. It can go to the kidneys where you have inflammation and can lead to dialysis. To the joints, you develop arthritis. So as you can see, it's a disease with multiple manifestations. Lupus as well can represent really a diagnostic challenge, and it affects primarily women with a female to male ratio 9:1, and it occurs often the start of the lupus close to the childbearing age. Now, in Canada, the prevalence for lupus varies from 32 to 51 cases per 1,000 individuals. And although mortality has improved over the last 2 decades in lupus compared to the general population, we continue to have high ratio of mortality in young women. So in another term, we can say that lupus continues to be an unrecognized leading cause of death in young women. And I would like to add as well the last point that lupus can significantly negatively affect the quality of life of patient. It can have an implication on their employment, social role participation in life, as well as life satisfaction. And
in terms of lupus treatments, cures, what do we have on offer?
So, as I said earlier, lupus, it's a chronic disease. And although we don't have cure yet for lupus, we know how to manage it better. We're learning this better. So the main medication that continues to be nowadays used for the treatment of lupus is steroid, prednisone. And the importance of prednisone, it shut the fire right away. but it's associated, unfortunately, with a large number of adverse events. It can cause cataract, diabetes. It can cause osteoporosis and fractures in the bone. It can cause something called necrosis in the large joints, where often it leads to joint replacement. And this can happen in young women at the age of 30 or greater, where you can see multiple joints are being replaced because of the necrosis and adverse event of prednisone. The other part of the treatment is heavily focused on immunosuppressant. And remember earlier, I said there is a dysfunction with the immune system. So what we're trying to do is to suppress the immune system, hoping to suppress the lupus activity. But this also can be associated with infection, infertility, and other adverse events. Now, more recently, we have witnessed the emergence of biologic therapy for lupus. So the spectrum of adverse event for biologic is less compared to traditional immunosuppressant. And hopefully the future is promising, and we definitely need more biologic for lupus.
And one of the challenges in being able to understand the disease and to be able to come up with treatments, better treatments, and hopefully eventually a cure is diagnosing the disease, correct? What is behind that difficulty?
You're absolutely right. So lupus is known as well the disease of 1,000 faces, and it can lead really to a wide variety of symptoms and manifestation and abnormalities in lab and X-rays and imaging. So although these symptoms and manifestation also as well, these symptoms and manifestation can change over time and often mimic the features of other diseases. So, and also we don't have diagnostic criteria for lupus. And the diagnosis of lupus is made rely on the expertise of the rheumatologist. Thus, lupus diagnosis relies first on early referral by the family physician to the expertise of the rheumatologist to confirm the diagnosis of lupus. And if we just read what's in the literature, we can see that nowadays even it continues to be delayed from the first symptoms until the diagnosis of lupus, and this can go to 3 or more years.
So talk to us then about your discovery. You were able to pioneer a method of assessment that can actually predict the trajectory of a patient's disease. Talk to us about your discovery and what that means for patients.
Remember, initially I have mentioned about the chronicity of the disease and that it waxes and wanes over time. So ideally, it would be great when you see the patient in the clinic to predict which pathway, which trajectory they're going to follow. And this brings you closer to what we call personalized medicine, where you can have even biomarkers that can tell you ahead of time which pathway your patient will be following, and you can then tailor your medication. So what we done recently at the Toronto Lupus Program, we've studied a group of patients on whom we have data from the minute they've been diagnosed with lupus. And we identified 3 major trajectories. 70% of the patient follows what we call relapsing remitting course, which means they have activity, they go into remission, activity up and down. And 10%, they do have monophasic, which means they're active for first 5 years, then they go into long remission. And this is ideally probably the best trajectory a patient would like to belong to. And we have a trajectory, what we call persistently active disease, which means no matter what you do, and despite of the use of steroid and immunosuppressant, you continue to have activity of the disease.
And Dr. Tuma, you're also pioneering other ways to predict the pathways of the disease. What can you tell us about these developments in your research?
So the Toronto Lupus Program, as you've mentioned earlier, is one of the oldest and largest cohort worldwide, and it has been established in the 1970s. And every time we see the patient, we collect clinical data, laboratory data, and we have the program hosts more than 50,000 at least patient visits. And this allows you to do a lot of research. So at this time, what we're trying to do with the help of the AI, artificial intelligence, is to try to link different biomarkers to the trajectory that I've highlighted on earlier, and as well try to link the biomarkers to predict which lupus you have. Is it the lupus with the skin manifestation, or the lupus with the seizure, or the one that's going to lead to kidney failure?
Another facet of your research is addressing a symptom of the disease that particularly affects female patients, cognitive impairment or brain fog. What have you discovered on this front?
So cognitive impairment is very common in lupus patients. And we have done recently a systematic review, and we found that the prevalence ranges from 35 up to 70 based on different studies. The challenge that we have, and again, before going to the challenges, cognitive impairment, as you have mentioned, is referred as well as brain fog. And every third patient visiting the clinic would complain about brain fog, which is problem with short memory, inability to multitask, and other aspects of the cognitive function. So, and this can drastically affect the quality of life, productivity of the patient as well. So the screening of CI has been delayed, and this is related to the current tests that we have. So the current tests that are available require a lot of time to be applied, and they're associated as well with high costs, which is often not covered by health care program. So in my lab, what we have done recently, we have studied a new computerized test that can facilitate the screening for cognitive impairment in lupus patient, and hopefully this will improve the delay in the diagnosis of cognitive impairment.
And finally, Dr. Toom, I have to ask, you're a native of Beirut, Lebanon. Back in 2007, after a number of years in terms of university degrees, you were assessing your fellowship opportunities, and you decide on the Krembil Research Institute and the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, a world away here in Toronto. Talk to us about how you came to that decision.
So first, what attracts you to a specific program, really the mentors, the people who you're going to work with and their expertise. And there is no doubt that the second would be the institution hosting the program, which is the University of Toronto, Krembil, Schroeder Arthritis. This is very important as well. And I definitely looked into the achievement of the program in the field. And at the end, the country hosting the program itself, which is Canada.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you here. We appreciate it. And we look forward to hearing more about your work in the future. Next up, Dr. Soumya Viswanathan, a translational scientist specializing in cell therapy. Dr. Viswanathan completed her PhD in biomedical engineering at the University of Toronto. She's worked as a senior scientist in the pharmaceutical industry in the US, and she joined UHN in 2009. Welcome, Dr. Viswanathan.
Hi, Christian. Nice to be here with you.
Your focus is on applying cell therapy to regenerate cartilage eroded by osteoarthritis. For us non-scientists, help us understand this premise underpinning your research of regeneration using stem cells.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, we've been looking at science fiction stuff, which we've heard Tim talk a little bit about, superhero stuff, but think about if you could repair and regenerate your own body. And this isn't as fantastic as it sounds, because actually it happens in nature all the time, right? Animals like salamanders, if they lose their limbs, they actually very quickly are able to grow them back. And to some extent, we have this too. So some of us with hair and skin, and certainly our blood cells, we constantly make new cells all the time, and we can regenerate those as we lose them. But other cells don't have this power, or maybe don't have it to the same capacity that these other cells do, or it kind of quietens down as we age, or as you have obesity, or you have some kind of injury, or you have inflammation. So we've talked a lot about inflammation. So that can really quieten the potential of these cells. So what we've been doing in my lab is trying to take cells from the patient's own body, growing them up in very clean environments, and then putting them back. So we have a lot more of them. They're much more concentrated than you would normally find in the body. And this helps to, help repair and restore some of the normal functions that were lost due to inflammation or aging or obesity. So we actually did the first clinical trial in Canada, and we'll talk about this in a bit. And we found that these cells, which we can take from the marrow, like deep within the bone of patients, or we can get them from fat, that we were able to reduce the inflammation. And inflammation is often what causes pain and swelling in patients and causes their symptoms and restrictions for their range of motion, causes stiffness. And we found that we were able to reduce that really greatly by injecting them back with these cells.
Okay, let's get to, though, you're talking about the 2015 trial you set out to restore cartilage using your cell therapy in a 12 patient, what's called a safety trial. So set the stage for us. What was involved in this trial?
Right. So this is a clinical trial that we had to do. And we, first thing we needed was funding because these clinical trials are quite expensive. And we went and worked with the orthopedic surgeons at the Schroeder Arthritis Institute and the Toronto Western Hospital. And the surgeons, even though it was going to put them out of their own jobs, believed in this so much, they actually put their own money to fund this trial. And the rest of it was raised actually by philanthropic monies. And we went and put together a package and we took it to Health Canada. Because everything that we do, these clinical trials are very much regulated because these are complex products, and how you make them and how you do the processing can have impact on the treatment. And so we have to ensure as you said, the safety is paramount, and also the quality of these cells are extremely rigorously tested. So we had to do a lot of additional testing to make sure that what we were putting back into the patients was safe. And of course, we wanted to ensure that they were efficacious. So we had to prove that to Health Canada with data that was built up in the laboratory and with animal studies to show that, yes, we've done all of this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this as well. This is the translational work that we did, in preparation for going into humans. And once we had all of that and Health Canada had reviewed it and they were satisfied that we had done a good job, they allowed us to go into these 12 patients and treat them.
Okay, so, and you were able to prove no harm, but I'm curious about the benefit to the 12 patients. I mean, you were growing, or they were growing cartilage? What did you discover?
Yeah, so originally we thought we would regenerate cartilage, but turns out it's very difficult to do that. So that's a little bit of a holy grail. And it's also very difficult in the patient population that we were going into, which was very late stage. So a lot of damage had been done. So there's very little cartilage left. So it's very difficult to regenerate something from nothing, right? Even we can't do that. But what we found was in all of these patients, in all 12 of them, there was real improvement in their pain, in their symptoms, in their stiffness, in their daily physical activity. We had people who were playing tennis that were able to go back to playing tennis. They were like, oh, I need to get back to my game. And they were able to do that. We had a school bus driver and she was very passionate about her job and she found that very difficult to do. So she was able to go back to her job. So it wasn't just that we got a safety signal, which was really the most important aspect of the trial, but we were also seeing these improvements in the patients. And although it was only a very small sample set, we were quite surprised with the improvements that we were seeing.
And of these 12 patients, you're still monitoring them now, 6 years later. Are you still seeing this benefit?
Yeah, actually, strikingly, it was just a single injection. So the endpoint for the trial, so that we were supposed to only follow them for 12 months, but we've now got data out to 24, in some cases 36 months. And we're still seeing that the patients that improved, and some patients, all of them improved, but some of them improved really dramatically compared to others. And those that did, their improvement is kind of, stabilized and continues out there. So single injection, out to 24 to 36 months has proven to be quite beneficial for these patients.
And do you have a sense yet in terms of what have you learned why some patients in the trial are getting more benefit than others?
Yeah, I think this was one of the surprising outcomes that we saw. And we know that, OA in one patient is very different from OA in another patient. So we call it as if it's one disease, but it's really not. So every person's disease is slightly different. So one of the things we've been interested in seeing is, understanding at a biological level why some patients responded really super well and why others didn't respond so well. So was it their level of inflammation where they started? And, if they had worse inflammation, did they do better or worse? Or was it some other properties of the cells that we put into them? And we've been finding out that there were some differences in the quality of the cells that they were injected with. And we've been trying to identify what in the cells were different and kind of doing a reverse engineering, right, to see what was the difference. And if we can add that difference to the cells that didn't really do as well, can we make the quality of those cells better? Can we boost the cells? So we've been doing some of that right now. We're doing experiments in mice that we give them an arthritic condition. So we give them an injury, which kind of mimics what happens to humans. And we're testing this out right now. And if that works, we'd like to take that further and go back to clinical trials as we did before.
Well, and did I read correctly? You're near to embarking on phases 2 and 3 of this cell therapy clinical trial?
Yeah, so we are looking at, so the first trial that we did was 12 patients. So it was a very small trial, but that was probably appropriate to get a safety signal. What we want to do now is increase that and add a placebo group, right? So we've heard about this placebo effect, which is that people think that they're doing well if you give them any treatment. So we want to, have a control trial where we inject some patients with the cells and another one with a placebo, maybe like a corticosteroid. And we don't tell them what they get, right? So they don't know, and the surgeons don't know. So it's double blinded. So everyone's blinded. And then we wait, and then we see how the patients respond to see, if they're really and truly responding to the cells, or just because psychologically they think they've gotten something and they should feel better. So the placebo effect is really important for us to understand and untangle. So that's part of what we want to do. And it's going to be a larger trial. And this time we're still interested in safety because that never goes away. But we want to understand a little bit more about efficacy because we've understood how these cells are working. Not fully, but we have a better understanding than we did when we started out. So we're going to be looking at certain biomarkers in these patients to see how they respond to this treatment. And it'll help us, get a better understanding of what these patients are doing. And eventually we want to go back to that, engineering the cells so we can use this more potent cells in the patients to get a better response.
This has such potential, it seems, to a non-scientist such as me, to be a game changer for those who suffer osteoarthritis. What does it mean to you, Samia, to be pioneering this kind of work at the Schroeder Arthritis Institute?
Well, I think I'm building on the work of others. You're always standing on the shoulders of giants, right? But I'm very passionate about the work I do, and I'm very lucky, I think, to wake up every day and do something that I love. But to think that it could have, if the trials all go very well, and if it does have this potential to either delay or, one day take you away from having to do joint replacement surgery, I think that would be, like you said, a game changer. It gives me deep satisfaction and pride. And, it's very meaningful for me to be doing this kind of work and to think that I have some small part in shaping that.
Well, we're glad to have you on board here. All right. Thank you, Dr. Viswanathan. I want to bring back Dr. Weaver and Dr. Kapoor briefly, if you don't mind, guys. It's really energizing to hear all this, pioneering work that's going on in terms of these principal investigators. And what's interesting is they all chose to come here. What does that tell you about the Schroeder Arthritis Institute?
It tells me it's the place to be if you want to do arthritis research.
I would like to copy what Soumya said. You wake up in the morning, you don't have to think twice where you're going to work because, everybody is so passionate and everybody has a same goal.
It's great. Okay. The catch-22 in all of this is we know science takes time. We know it has a price tag. And complicating that is that medical research in Canada has no base funding. So you can't turn to the Ministry of Health. You can't turn to UHN. You pretty much, all your funding comes from external sources that are also tied to specific research projects. To put that in perspective, I did a little research here myself. In 2020, UHN Research had over 700 different groups funding research projects. That's a lot of chasing. So given all that, talk to us, you two, about the role of philanthropy in making this challenging financing model work.
Philanthropy makes a huge difference. There's funding through government agencies such as CIHR, and that's nice that it provides a certain amount of base funding. But if you really want to push the limits, be at the cutting edge, it takes additional support, additional resources, and that's really only available from philanthropy.
Wade?
Absolutely. I'll copy that. And also, if you look at the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, initially we were an arthritis program. We had Campaign to Cure Arthritis. This has been built on philanthropy. If you're looking at funding which comes from, whether it's from research grants or any other mechanisms, these funding mechanisms provide seed funding, very small amounts. To be able to really take discoveries from bench to bedside, you need large resources and large support and large funding. We're so thankful to the Schroeder Foundation, the Krembil Foundation, Tony and Sherry Fell, Buchan Foundation, and so many other supporters who have really contributed in creating world-class infrastructure within the Institute. We have one of the largest biobanks in the world, and this is enabling us to understand our patients. We're able to look for biomarkers, we're able to discover these new therapies, but not only discover, actually take it all the way from labs to the patients. And that's why philanthropy plays a huge role in this.
Mohit, I'm going to hold on to you for 1 second. We're going to get to the questions right after. You have 1 minute. If you would like our guests out there to know of any specific funding needs at the Institute right now.
The entire Institute at the moment has sustainability, where we have funding to sustain our current scientists. But at the moment, we are unable to expand and bring in new experts who are required to innovate and take certain discoveries all the way from bench to bedside. And that's why the sustainability plan is in place, but the expansion plan, we need your support. All
right. Thanks so much to everyone. I want to bring in the audience to our conversation tonight. Your questions have been coming in through the past hour. If we can throw up the Slido slide, there we go. From Flavia, I have not been able to get consensus on whether certain foods, example, nightshade family, should be avoided if you have rheumatoid arthritis. Any recommendations? Mohit, do you want to take that one?
Absolutely. And, I would actually invite Dr. Tuma, who's a rheumatologist, who would have better answers for this.
Take it away.
So I think there is no strong evidence when it comes to food and treatment of rheumatoid arthritis, but definitely there are research showing that certain diet can help with the management of inflammatory arthritis. What I tell the patient always, if you try and it works, don't fight success, but there is no strong evidence-based medicine to recommend this.
Question from Mark Krembil. Arthritis is a disease of the immune system. While your focus is arthritis, how does your research overlap into other diseases? Who wants to take that one?
I could try that.
Samia.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Great question. So actually, one of the things we've been looking at and very interested in is, a certain immune cell, which is found a lot in arthritis. And originally, it was thought that arthritis was not at all inflammatory. There was no immune cells, but that's really changed in the past few decades, where we know that these innate immune cells, which are kind of like surveillance cells and your body's first response, are really present there. And we've also seen that when we do these cell therapies, we're able to change kind of the ratio of these immune cells, so they're less and less inflammatory, and they return back to their original state, which is just to patrol and to surveil. But this has parallels, right? We know that in cardiac disease, in arteriosclerosis, in liver damage, in lung disease, again, it's these macrophages, which are these innate cells, which come in initially to react to some kind of foreign invasion, a bacteria, a virus, or some kind of injury. But then they stick around. They don't go back to base, right? Like they just stick around for a long time, and then they become part of the problem. And in fact, they keep calling their mates to come over, and it creates and amplifies and exacerbates the problem, and it causes this inflammatory disease. So understanding why they stick around and how we can kind of calm them down is important, not just in arthritis, but in a lot of chronic disease, because it turns out that it's happening in many chronic disease. And it's kind of the flip side of what happens in cancer as well. So, there's a lot of overlap with what we do with all kinds of research modalities. So the learnings is not just restricted to our field. And often we attend scientific conferences where, we talk with colleagues in other fields, and it's fascinating how similar the systems are in other parts of the body.
Next question, for those with osteoarthritis, other than pain meds and exercise, are there new interventions which are useful to reduce pain and increase mobility? Certainly we heard from Tim about the potential for cannabis. Anybody else?
I would invite Dr. Leroux to answer this.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, isn't it? Like the question between, the primitive stuff that we've always recommended and the end stage, which is really the joint replacement. What is the in between? And this is our purpose. This is our goal, is to try to help patients manage their pain, manage their dysfunction, if you will, and hopefully not undergo an operation for their problem. And so I think biologic injectables are the forefront of this right now. This is where the future is in the biological injections, and we hope to uncover things, or Mohit's efforts to have a drug that you can take that can prevent the evolution of arthritis. Cannabis plays a role, but we really have no scientific basis or recommendations for that just yet. Other than that, right now we struggle with that. To be honest with you, we struggle to improve pain and dysfunction in patients without these helpful adjuncts to our treatment. And so the future is bright, hopefully. And I think we'll see a lot of evolution in this in the next 5 to 10 years to better help our patients.
Quick program note. We have reached the top of the hour, but because of the demand in terms of questions coming in from everybody, I'm hoping can everybody in the panel and in the audience stick around for maybe 5 more minutes, 6 more minutes, that we could get some more questions. And actually, Dr. Viswanathan, I'm wondering if I should throw this one at you, because someone has thrown in a question based on, I think what you were saying is, how would one volunteer to be part of a clinical trial with the cartilage cell therapy?
Yeah, I think we haven't opened it yet, but when we do, we usually provide a hotline for it, and the information is posted on the website. There's also the clinicaltrials.gov, so all of those will be posted. And usually it is a referral from your doctor to come into the clinic and to be seen by the surgeons. But we'll have all of that information when we're a little bit closer to starting that. But usually there's a 1-800 number and a website that goes with it. Yeah.
And would that be if we started with searching on uhn.ca?
Yeah, it definitely will be there. So you can search there, and it'll be in multiple places, because we do promote it widely to recruit.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. Next question. Is there any evidence that the Pfizer vaccine second dose aggravates arthritic areas of the body? If so, is there some learning to be derived from the connection?
So, Christian, I can take this and then pass it on to Dr. Tuma. It's too early for us to actually draw conclusions from not only the second dose, but actually the first dose at the moment. We actually have tons of trials which are ongoing, either in collaboration or some of the Schroeder Arthritis Institute investigators are spearheading COVID-related trials. And maybe Dr. Tuma can actually expand on that.
So I would add here as well, whether the first or the second vaccine, we know that it can cause adverse event. And one of it is arthralgia, which is joint pain and muscle aches and pain. But often these are self-limited. Now, if we're asking, would this trigger activity in existing rheumatic disease, such as rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, the data have showed the safety in terms of vaccine triggering activity of these diseases. So it doesn't exist so far in the data that we've seen. And the benefits still outweigh the possibility of adverse event with these vaccines. So we still recommend it.
Appreciate it. Okay. Next question. Does the Institute host any volunteer studies for patients in the early stages of arthritis, or is the only access to the Institute via doctor referral? Dr. Viswanathan, I guess you dealt with that. I don't know, Mohit, anything to add?
Absolutely. It's the same answer as Dr. Viswanathan.
The 3-year MD first, but you can monitor developments and trials upcoming on the website. Okay. Next question. I have osteoarthritis. Will drinking half an ounce of red wine before bedtime good for decreasing the inflammation and improve mobility?
I wish I had the answer of this. So I would be drinking bottles of wine to be able to counteract inflammation. But to be honest, there is a lot of data that there are polyphenolic compounds and molecules which are present in red wine to be able to suppress inflammation. But you would have to take these in a very large quantity to be able to suppress this, and that is not humanly possible. So while there is data on extracts of wine, which have been tested on patient cells and in some preclinical models, but there is no really direct evidence that drinking wine with very small components of these protective molecules can be effective.
Next question. Does the likelihood of RA meds working to achieve remission depend on genetic factors such as blood type, etc.?
Zahi?
I don't think, again, there is a clear answer about the relation between blood type and the effectiveness of the treatment for rheumatoid arthritis. But there is no doubt that everything at the end, it's in a way related to genetic factors, which can predict, again, the pathway of your disease, but not the way the question is asked, no.
All right. And look, you've all been so generous with your time. We'll make this our last question tonight. Are there any ongoing or future projects that will focus on preventive measures and or education to prevent arthritis?
We actually have a lot of education programs which is ongoing within the Schroeder Arthritis Institute. There's a GLAD program which Schroeder Arthritis Institute investigators are working with various investigators across Canada. And actually Dr. Leroux is also involved in some of these education programs. Maybe Tim, would you like to expand?
Yeah, so we're looking at collaborations across UHN with the Michener Institute to try to develop technology to help patients educate patients about arthritis in ways that they can self-manage their own symptoms of arthritis. I think that's an important thing, particularly in the Canadian healthcare system, where patients are referred and they languish on a wait list to see a doctor who then simply institutes a proper treatment program for them and they get better. So we want to minimize that access and that delay and educate patients to then take ownership of their own disease state. And that's one project that we're working on. And just improving our overall presence on the World Wide Web here at UHN in the Schroeder Arthritis Institute, and continue to be a leader in patient experience and education for arthritis and osteo and rheumatoid arthritis. And so those are some of the things that we are looking to move forward with.
That will have to be our last word, everyone. Thank you so much to all our guests today for giving of their time and sharing their stories. Dr. Donald Weaver, Mohit Kapoor, Tim Leroux, Zahi Tuma, and Sumaya Viswanathan. And to all our friends out there who joined us today, all the Discovery Ball supporters, a big thank you from the UHN Foundation for your continued support. A reminder, we're hosting the third and final of our three-part Krembil Discovery Series next week. That's Tuesday, June 22nd at 5:30 p.m. And we'll be featuring the amazing work at the Donald K. Johnson Eye Institute. I should call it visionary work. For more on that event, as well as the recording of today's session, and of course, information on ways to give, keep an eye on your email inbox. Until next week, we hope you can join us. We look forward to seeing you. Stay safe, everyone.